Hey Authortube, this is EJ Eden here, and today's video is going to be on querying. So querying is the process if you wish to go into traditional publishing versus self-publishing. Querying is a process you do either to the publisher itself or to an agent who then sells your manuscript to the publisher for you. So querying is quite a process. I've been through it myself a couple of years ago with I Am Marked. And I want to tell you a little story about how I was asked for a full manuscript request from the Blair Partnership, which was J.K. Rowling's agent in the UK. And this is not really like a brag piece, it's more of like there were so many things that I did wrong just because I was uneducated in that space a few years ago, and this video is for you. So when you get a full manuscript request from the Blair Partnership, you don't F it up. Maybe 3 years ago I had my first draft, listen to that, first draft of I Am Marked, and I sent it out to probably about like 30 agents, hoping to get it represented traditionally. And a couple came back asking for partials, so they might ask you for partial, which is a partial part of your manuscript. So you send them like a covering letter, and usually like 3 chapters, like depending on the website. So always, top tip number 1, always follow their request, because likely if you don't follow exactly what they've asked you to do, they're just going to chuck it out because they have so many manuscripts come in every day. So I was in the drafting stage, and I didn't realize I was in the drafting stage at the time when I was querying, because it hadn't been seen by anyone else. It hadn't been it hadn't gone through a developmental editor, a copy editor, or a proofreader. Oh, like now I'm like, oh my god, what an amateur. But honestly, it's just things you don't know when you're starting out. So a developmental editor, a bit of a mouthful, is when they basically do a deep dive into your manuscript and look at things like plot, character, voice, anything like that, and they kind of tell you this is what's great about it and this is what needs work. So I hadn't done that. I definitely recommend getting a professional and professional eyes on your work, because you know, if it's your best friend or your mom, of course they're going to be like, I love it, and they're not going to really say anything. Not that that's not useful, but you need a little bit of a deeper dive than that, and you need someone professional to look at it. So that hadn't been done, hadn't been seen by a copy editor, hadn't even put it through Grammarly. Like, there was probably mistakes all over it. So at the time I was like 19, I want to say, when I was doing that. So I'm like, oh, just give yourself grace. Like, it's fine that happened. But anyway, amazingly, I kind of sent it to the Blair Partnership as like, funny, this will be a joke. And a lady came back to me and said, we love the first few chapters and we want to review the whole manuscript. But I had finished the whole manuscript, but I hadn't edited it all. So I went back to her and I was like, yeah, sure, like, can you just give me a couple of weeks and I'm just gonna finish this last editing round. Again, like, that's a big no-no. I would never send out a manuscript that A, hadn't been seen by professional eyes, and B, wasn't like your final draft, because I was still like in the process of editing at that time. And so the lady at the Blair Partnership was really lovely about it. Like, I'm surprised she wasn't just like, forget about it, like, and just known I was an amateur right there and then. But she was really lovely. She was like, yeah, absolutely, like, take as long as you want before you send it. And then, yeah, and then I edited it. It took me a couple more weeks because I was doing an acting gig at the same time. And then sent it to her, waited a few weeks, and she came back to me and she was like, hey, like, you're a great writer, but like for her the pacing wasn't quite right, and that's probably something that could have been fixed if I had sent it to a developmental editor, copy editor, if I'd got someone else to look at it. So like, since then I've had it go through the developmental edit, I've had it go through the copy edit, I've cut the first 50 pages because that was like an issue with the pacing, it didn't get into the story quick enough. And you know, if you get a rejection, just be polite, like send a recognition that you've received it, because you never know, like it is a relatively small industry. You never know if you're gonna like, don't be like, oh, you suck, like your opinion doesn't matter. Like, I would always send it, you know, thank you very much for taking the time to look over it, because they've like taken the time to write you an email back and say, hey, look, it's not quite for me, which I think is really nice. And also know that not everyone does that. I feel like personally it should be like best practice to do that, but because obviously you've put a lot of time into querying them and researching the right agent that you think could work well with your work. But also I do understand that they're ridiculously busy and they have a lot of manuscripts coming in every day, as well as like all their normal work that they have to get done. So busy life, props to you agents. Speaking of query letters, I would definitely recommend getting a professional eye on this too. There are a lot of editors that will help you with your query letter. I use a platform called Readsy, and I know a lot of people do. It was like kind of an expensive investment for me to get the whole thing edited, but 100% the manuscript is lifted, it's better work from it. So it's just, think of it as an investment in yourself, it's an investment in your creativity, and at the end of the day you don't want to put out a product that you don't feel proud of, and the editors do really help you lift it to the next level. And so yes, going back to my original point, speaking of a query letter, get a professional eye on this too. It's definitely really important just to have, they'll know what best practice is. You know, you can do as much research as you can. In terms of query letters, there's a lot out there on the internet, but I think like having someone that's in the industry read over your letter and just give you a little bit of advice would be super helpful. So on to the next bit of the story. So the lady that wrote back to me from the Blair Partnership was, honestly, she was so lovely. She wrote me like screeds and screeds, because obviously she'd asked for a full manuscript from me, not just a partial, which was like pretty, you know, you do get your hopes up. She'd asked me to not give it to any other agents, and like she kind of had like first dibs on it basically, so obviously my hopes were super high. And yeah, so she wrote me a really lovely letter, and I do, like, to this day really appreciate the time that she put and she gave me specific feedback, not just like, this isn't for me. And so yeah, and I absolutely really appreciated that, but I totally got discouraged. I didn't touch the book for like another 2 to 3 years after that point, because I was just like absolutely heartbroken, and I was like, oh, it sucks, like throw it out. So it just was sitting on my computer for years and years, finished. And there was, I feel like everything is so cheesy, but I feel like everything happens for a reason, and there was a reason why the traditional publishing route like didn't work out for me at that time. And I think that, you know, it still could. I think it's always an option there. Like, you don't have to just like self-publish and then you're like a self-published author forever. You know, you're getting exposure and you're getting practice, and then maybe one day your work could be traditionally published. But now I think in terms of my business goals and my life goals, I think self-publishing is totally the right way to go for me, and I'm really glad that I waited a few years, like now in hindsight, that didn't work out, just because I feel like I love the fact that I get so much authority over my own work. Like, I can choose the cover, I can choose the marketing plan, I can choose the channels that I want to sell it on, and it's just like it's been a really incredible experience, not only from a writing perspective but also from a business perspective and a learning perspective. And so yeah, wouldn't have it any other way. But also don't get discouraged. Like, you will get a few no's. That's just like, it's the law of averages. The better you're going to become at it. But also, if you are consistently getting no's and there's like consistently the same notes that are coming back to you, you also need to know when to pivot and to be like, okay, cool, like all these agents are saying the same thing in terms of like negative stuff about my work. Maybe I need to take a look at that and like rehash the whole situation and then go back to querying. So top tips from me, if you want to query, have it. I mean, these seem kind of simple, but I didn't do it, and so there will be people out there that haven't done it either. So that's the theory. So have it edited professionally, preferably by like 2 different people, like a developmental editor and a copy editor, because that means it's going to be in like really good shape moving forward when you're querying it. Number 2, have a professional eye over your query letter. That's really important as well, because that's like the first thing the agent will see. So that needs to be really, really great as well. Number 3, I've just got my notes here. Have the whole manuscript ready in case they ask for a full. Don't be like, oh, I'm partway through editing it like I did. Like, it just doesn't give a professional vibe, and definitely just have it ready. Number 4, like, just don't get discouraged. Like, you will get no's, but you've just got to keep going. The law of averages, so important. And also, number 5, if you're getting consistent no's for the same reasons, you need to go back and take a little look at your work and see, okay, these agents are all saying the same thing. How can I make improvements? And then number 6, like, just obviously you never know in terms of the industry, like, who you're going to bump into. So never write negative things back to agents. It's probably, you know, they probably do get that. They probably get heartbroken people and like, why didn't you take my work? But just write a polite note, like, thank you for taking a look at it. Like, you don't need to say anything else. The work wasn't for them, and that's fine, because there will be someone that loves your work and that is perfect to represent your work. So whatever is meant to be is meant to be. And keep writing, keep querying, and I will see you guys next time.